Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday, May 22nd, and we are here in the fourth week, getting started here in our last round before the end of the month. You have submitted your week 3 assignments, which includes working in Wise and doing the chiptune composition. So we have a couple of submissions here for peer review for the chiptune composition, and we'll start out listening to those and then move on to the new assignments for week 4. Overall, our main focus is to kind of talk about how you can wrap up the projects that you've been working on, kind of summarize or provide a summary for what you've learned over the course of the month, and give you resources that if you want to find more information and investigate this field further, you have a couple of tools to get started beyond the class. So basically, how do you take everything that you've worked on, take all the stuff that you learn, and apply it beyond the class, and if intended, get started in the games industry. So that will be our direction in the second half. But for now, let's go ahead and take a listen to some of the chiptune compositions that we have here. The main thing I was looking over the discussions or the posts in the peer review, and I found a number of people that said they definitely enjoyed this project, and it is a fun and interesting kind of approach to the composition overall. The main purpose in this week 3, we are focused on technology like Wise and how to get your music working in the game. And a lot of the stuff that we discuss is focused on where we are at now. And to really give a sense of how far along the technology has come, we go back to using the restrictions of the original Nintendo system. And sometimes people find that the restrictions are restrictive, and the sounds are kind of limited overall, and maybe that provides some challenge. I also find a pretty good majority of folks actually kind of benefit from the restrictions. One of the main things that I find is that we take away the infinite possibilities that you typically get in presets and synths and all sorts of instruments that are available in Logic. A lot of folks get lost very quickly and immediately when starting to dig through all of the sounds and all the presets, where often the composition comes from the sound itself. Like, hey, you just scroll through presets and you find a cool preset and then you write something that works for that cool sound. Well, by taking away all of the interesting tones and synths and all that, and going back to very simple waveforms, it really puts the emphasis on the composition. And I find that the compositions are much stronger overall in this type of approach, where so you don't get lost early on, and you get directly to the composition itself, and you can't kind of sit still too long on these sounds because they get really stale and boring. So a lot of times it's a lot more kind of faster and upbeat, more staccato, and a lot more movement overall to create that interest. So let's go ahead and take a listen here. I'm going to be bringing up the screenshots as we listen. So the main restrictions were you were limited to 4 instruments. You could have more than 4 tracks. Let's see if I scroll through these screenshots, if anybody has. You can have more than 4 tracks, like this. You just can only have 4 playing at any one time. So, and this was definitely possible with the original Nintendo system. They could very quickly switch between lots of different tracks. But, oh, these are the bounces. Oh, I was like, why is there audio in here? But you could only play 4 voices simultaneously. So on a particular voice, they could be switching between as many different presets or sounds as needed overall. And it ends up where it's like the same band is playing completely different compositions, because everybody has the same basic toolbox filled with the tools to make this music, and what they do with those tools ends up being wildly different. So I was a little hesitant when I first started out this assignment as to whether it would work or not, but I ultimately find a lot of people will gravitate towards it, and it ends up becoming a good kind of portfolio piece to add to the mix. So let me go ahead and open these up in QuickTime, and also bring up a screenshot. Come on. And oh, that's volume. Let's go ahead and take a listen. Cool. I like that kind of gliss or the sweep up in at the very end there. Let's go ahead and bring this back. Hold on just a sec. Do that. All right, so we got a little bit of movement here. It kind of picks up basically when everything drops in right here, and it breaks down to the drums. Then it really picks up here. So I would say even starting with this section to really have a lot more interest from the very beginning, especially for portfolio pieces. It is best overall to start out with the kind of strongest feel that you can. The other thing I might do is have a little bit more change to the drums. Maybe even go into a double time kind of feel at some point in one of these changes. So it was and kind of helps to raise the pacing and maybe bring it back down. I would even put these kind of sweeps earlier in there, kind of sweeping up into the note of whatever your melody is. I mean, you don't need to do it constantly, but it's a good kind of ear candy that works. I think the bass could probably come up an octave. It seems a bit low. It might just be my headphones, but compared, especially these simple waveforms, especially like square waves, just cut through especially at a high frequency, at a high pitch. They cut through the mix quite easily and can bury a whole bunch of stuff. So I think that bass could probably at least come up in volume, if not come up in an octave, or come up an octave. All right, those were some of the main things that I hear, but good stuff to start with. Take those out there. Hello, Joel. As we go through these, if you have any questions, please let me know. Bring that up. And open it up in QuickTime. There we go. A little bit bigger. Oh, come on. Why are you not getting bigger? That should work. All right, let's give this one a try. Okay. So let's do back up to the front here. I would keep this kind of melodic line in much more consistently. Again, start with the melody. Start strong from the very beginning. You don't want anybody to have to wait around for the music to build up. Portfolio pieces are much different than kind of song form composition, where in a song you have an intro and it builds through verse 1 and then it rises maybe through the chorus and then there's a break and then there's another huge chorus. And here you just want to kind of smack them across the face as soon as you can with any portfolio piece, not just a chiptune composition, but in portfolio pieces, people are going to be listening. You're going to have to catch somebody's ear in like 5 or 10 seconds, well, not even 10 seconds, somewhere below 10 seconds, because they'll be scrolling through stuff very, very quickly. So make sure. Hold on just a sec. Make sure that, develop this melodic line a little bit more. It's mainly because of where it drops out. It kind of feels like incomplete phrases every once in a while. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, this last little bit feels like you're starting a new phrase after you've already gone through 32 bars. So once you hit this 33rd bar, you go in for another, 2 bars or so, and it just feels like it's a bit unresolved. This phrase right here. And that's where it would end overall, because it just feels kind of a little bit unresolved right there. So much more consistency, or start it from the top. And I mean, you certainly can take these little pauses and whatnot, but a little too frequent overall. And again, some changes to the drums and the probably bass line. You do have some changes to the harmony here in the second half. All right. Very good. Let's try the next one here. Come on, computer. You can do it. All right. So here, good. We have a good solid change. It looks like we have maybe more kind of sustained lines here, and then it jumps around a bit more in the second half or second part. Let's go ahead and take a listen. Very good. Definitely like the change here in the second half. My microphone. Definitely like the change here in the second half. The more kind of staccato feel works. The first lead, I have a little bit of issue with the pitch, kind of wobble, the vibrato. It gets feels a little too much out of tune at times, and mostly it feels like it's, I don't know, it almost feels like it's like a major second, and then you hit certain notes that push it out of the key. It's kind of an interesting effect if used sparingly, but it almost gets out of tune, the feeling of being out of tune in the first half. And then the kind of smaller staccato stuff works very well here, especially as a kind of alternate to the first lead. There are some dissonant notes that I'm hearing in the lead, kind of the lead melodic idea here in the second half, and it would just be a case of checking your chord progression, what you're kind of doing down here, right? Yeah, these are all drums. So what key you're in, and the kind of major, minor tonality against some of the notes here in this lead melodic line. So just check those out. Maybe the whole thing could kind of be sped up a little bit to help with the energy. I think most of that comes from the feeling of these longer sustained notes in the first part of it. All right, so those are the main things that I notice on that one. Things to focus on. As always, it's mostly just little tweaks and development or variation. All right, Joel. Actually, since you're here in the chat, any challenges or any issues excuse me, that you ran into while working on this project? Let me go ahead and open this. this in QuickTime. Here in the chat, just trying not to let some of the sounds sound the same. Yeah, it is really a limited palette overall, so it is trying to find suitable sounds that won't get stale or boring, which is why it ultimately goes to the composition. Like the bass line getting clashed with the saw sound. Okay. There we go. Oh. There it is. Let's give it a listen. Cool. Excellent. I love the energy through it. Again, these kind of faster, more upbeat compositions work very well for these types of sounds. I can understand what you're probably referring to when, especially in the lower frequencies, that these, oops, I lost my headphones, that these tones can start kind of, once they hit the same pitch, they start kind of blending into each other and getting some good separation out of them, because you don't have like crazy different attacks and effects or modulation on top. So I definitely liked the changes. That's another thing that keeps interest in a portfolio piece, is not sticking on the same, especially without something without lyrics, where they're paying attention to the constantly changing lyrics, that the music changes. And so having that sort of development all the way through works out very well. Another thing that you could do is doing real fast sweeps, where you're either chromatically or up a scale or chordal or something like that, where you're doing fast sweeps, 30-second note sweeps, 64th notes sweeps, can really give that kind of early arcade game or Nintendo game kind of vibe. This section right here, kind of a dropout. Watch out for this one note. There's like one random note in there. Right here. Boop. So just watch out for that. But then it just takes off, which is great. And you can get, when you're going at a faster pace overall, you can kind of work with a little bit more repetition and slight variations. But overall, very nice work. Works very well. I'd say that's for either like an action scene or a racing game or something like that. All right. More good stuff. QuickTime. This is the one where the screenshot threw me off. It's like, oh no, there's audio in there, and there's 17 tracks and all this stuff. So, but that is not actually what is happening. This looks like all the bounce down here, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 tracks. I thought the markers up here were another track, and but upon further inspection, it looks perfectly fine. Oh, here's this. Nope, not that. Here is this. And this, and this, and color coding is always good, so you know where you're at, what you're doing. Here we go. Very good. Great energy, good pace through it. The melodic development and the changes to the groove overall works very well. It's good because initially I thought this was the melody line, and then it gets doubled up and the real melody comes in, so that's good, provides that change. Then I was thinking that at some point you needed to have more of the rhythmic change, and then you kind of go to this halftime feel. There's some cool stuff happening in the percussion. And then kind of the melodic ideas moving around overall. One thing you might try is maybe creating a couple of tracks with different sounds, and then having the melody move between those different sounds. Again, you can have more than 4 tracks, more than 4 sounds, but only 4 at any one time. So those would be some things. I mean, because the other thing that I find interesting is there's some parts where the melody and the counter melody start moving parallel, and you can hear this slight phasing, which is cool, which actually is interesting because different notes, different pitches, or maybe different tones will cause, even though they're at the same pitch, they might be at a different octave or at a slightly different waveform, which would cause little kind of phase tweaks as it's playing along. So Yeah, I think compositionally it works quite well. So it might be just changing up, doing some other production kind of stuff, dropping things out. The halftime kind of thing works. Those kind of sort of rhythmic changes, and changing tonality at some point. Very good. Good works to listen to. Let's do the next one here. All right, we got that. We got that. All right, let's go ahead and listen. Very good. Again, that kind of bouncy beat overall works very well. I would, same thing that I recommended earlier, is just to hit them pretty solid from the beginning. I mean, the groove is pretty good here, but it's really once all this, there's a lot more movement in the bass and the harmony, and then you got the melodic line in there. So you might actually want to just start right here. So instead of typically a song form will start out, where's my finger? We'll start out quieter, and then we'll build up, and then kind of break down, and then build up again, and then fall towards the end. But what you should do in a portfolio piece instead is hit from the very top early on and maintain it, and then maybe drop down into a break, and then build back up for a big ending overall. Same sort of thing with the end here is it kind of loses a little interest when the melody drops back out. So keep the melody all the way to the end and end on one big kind of finale there. But there's good changes in the melody. The kind of faster pace and the groovy bass line helps to, you can have more consistency with that as long as there's some good movement in the melody. It's almost like each section needs to have a little bit of change and a little bit of development overall. So, very good. Oops, there we go. One more. Is here. All right, there. Come back. QuickTime, screenshots. And we'll try one more. All right. So here, the main thing I hear is the dissonance. With these simple waveforms, dissonance even sticks out even farther. So it's the melody against the harmonic line. Watch out for any clashing notes like that, those kind of things in there. So especially with these simple waveforms, you want to stay. I mean, you can do chromatic runs and stuff like that, but you mostly are going to want to resolve to chord tones and keep it very diatonic overall. The other thing would be speed it up. It's kind of like a laid-back pace. Also change the drums at some point, the pattern of it, away from just the do do ka do 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 da boom 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 ba boom boom boom, and changing the harmony and all of that would definitely create that sort of variation. I mean, the melody's constantly moving around, but having some variation below it just creates more interest overall. All right, so those are the main things that I'm hearing. Good work overall. Lots of good things to listen to. It always amazes me, impresses me, or whatever, where everybody can basically be given the same box of instruments and come up with very different compositions overall. I keep referring to this as a portfolio piece, and honestly, it's every project, 2D platformer, Angry Bots, and this one is really intended to build out a demo reel and add to your portfolio. And one way that I often suggest that you take this further is you have established themes and ideas in this composition utilizing restrictions. So at some point, to take this composition and it switches into full orchestration somewhere halfway on through the piece, where you are basically saying, okay, if I had a whole bunch of restrictions, didn't have a lot of technology available to myself to this project, then I could still do some amazing stuff within these limitations. But beyond that, with full tools set and budget and time, then this is also what it could turn into, to show basically the extremes of if you had really big restrictions to really no restrictions compositionally, what would happen. And so that's a good way of kind of turning this, number one, turning it beyond, making it kind of embellishing it, or not embellishing it, but improving it, adding to it beyond the class, and turning it into a solid portfolio piece. So those are my recommendations here. If you have any comments, go ahead and let me know. Post those up either in a feedback or send me a message. And if you're having any issues with Wise or finishing out the projects for the month, now is the time. We want to address all of that in this last week. So I'm going to turn it over to the archive now to discuss the new assignments for week 4. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. All right, so we have our submissions there. Like I said, the focus of this week is, your final week is to take the information and the projects that you've worked on and put them in the best light to show them off beyond the class and beyond your time at Full Sail, and be able to show the work off that you've done and completed, hopefully to future employers and future clients and whatnot. So as you have been progressing through all of your classes, you certainly should be gathering together as much of your classwork and materials and projects that you've been working on and put it together into a strong demo reel to show that off. And that includes these game projects. They are well and good as grades and as projects for a class, but their real intention is to give you a vehicle to show off your music and to show off your work and be able to demonstrate that out there as you get started in the industry. So we are going to talk about the best way of showing off your music that is intended to play back in the game is to actually have somebody play the game. The best way of demonstrating your music for a game is to actually demo that game. So you have the game projects, you have the game applications, and you can distribute those as you wish. They are yours. They are free for you, free for educational purposes, free for demo purposes. The only thing is you just you would indicate that you did all of the music and sound, but you don't claim that you created the game. But they are for you to put on a website, put in Dropbox, and send it around to future clients or future employers, and to show off your work. However, there are some limitations, mostly like technical limitations, with demonstrating your game. The first one is it's a Mac game, and so whoever wants to play the game needs to have a Mac computer in order to play it. The games can be put in or made as PC games, but that takes a lot of extra understanding and programming to convert the projects. I mean, it is possible, but mostly you have a Mac application. And so somebody has to have a Mac, and maybe whoever you're sending this off to has a computer, and they can check it out. They have to have a computer powerful enough to play the games. That isn't as much of an issue as it used to be, as people's computers have progressively gotten better over the years and have started with better computers. We really don't have much of an issue running these projects. So then you have another issue of very smart people on the internet won't probably just download some random application and run it on their computer. You would be very smart not to just download random zip files and open them up and play them on your computer. Now, of course, that's not the case with these applications, and they aren't. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but just a random link on a website, you're not going to get tons of people just saying, "Okay, sure, I'm just going to download this unknown application and run it." So you need to have some way of showing off your work. You need to have some way of people being able to see your music working in a game. You could just take like one of your main loop files and put it up on SoundCloud and say, "Hey, here's a loop that I wrote for a game, and I promise it works in the game." So the best way of showing off your music working in the game is actually having the game to show off. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a video capture of you playing the game with your music and sound effects working. So by this point in the month, you have composed the music for both of these projects, created all the sound effects. We had an opportunity for peer review, and you also got feedback for your submission. You have the opportunity to do any revisions or changes to that composition or those sound effects. Last week you used Wise and used an audio middleware tool to connect your music and your sound effects working in the game. You got it working in the game, you tested it out, you played the game, and you listened to your sound effects and your music, and more than likely found some issues with it. I mean, I guess you could knock it out of the park the first time every single time, but most of the time you get it in the game and there's I don't know, 75, 80% of it's all right, but there's another 20% there that I need to tweak and to change. So you go back to your sounds and you tweak your sounds a little bit. You go back to your music and you mix your files and you bounce everything out again. And you test it, put it back in the game, test it out. And that is a very constant kind of revision or iteration cycle where you compose something, you say, I think this is going to work. You put it in the game, go, man, that kind of works, but I need to do this. And then you go back and you fix it, you put it back in the game, you test it out, and you go around and around. So once you get everything set up in the game, then now you're ready to do this final video capture. It basically proves the process that you have created all the music and sound effects, put it in the game, tested it out, and have something to show for it. So you will be using QuickTime and a program called Loopback in order to capture the video on the screen, or the game on the screen. All right, so let me talk about how you will set this up and how this will actually work. So actually I can just do this real quick. When you go on FSO, here's week 4. Here's your final game captures assignment. Notice that it is 0 weighted. That doesn't mean that you don't have to do it. It's just not turned in here. You are going to turn it down here in the final project delivery. So don't just ignore the assignment because it is 0 weighted. But it provides you with all the material. It says you will submit this YouTube link in a separate assignment on FSO. Final game capture. So you'll get a PDF here, and you'll get a PDF here. And the first one just gives you mostly just an overview and delivery instructions. Just kind of a real quick summary of how it all works and how to deliver everything here. But there's a separate PDF that goes slide by slide and goes into a lot more detail. So let me just take a look at this here. You will use QuickTime, which is already installed on your computer, and a program called Loopback in order to capture audio inside of your computer. Loopback is a free application. You can just go to the link here. Well, it's not a free application. It costs $99, but you don't need the $99 version. I don't know, unless you completely love the application and you want to support these people, but really you just need the free download for our purposes. The limitation with the free download is that it lasts for 15 minutes, and you only need to record for a minute or two. So if for some reason the 15 minutes runs out, then you just shut down the program and open it back up, and you got another 15 minutes. But after a while, it starts blasting white noise at you, so make sure if you hear that, that's what's going on there. So you just download the Loopback, and what it is it is a virtual audio cable application for your computer. Meaning, you are going to record the video using QuickTime. You've probably used QuickTime at some point. This is actually QuickTime down here for all my videos. QuickTime is just capture the video from your webcam, or actually in this instance it's going to capture the actual screen, but QuickTime doesn't allow you to do audio from inside of your computer. Actually, here's a better view of it. This is what it looks like when you open up and do the screen recording, and when you hit this down arrow, it doesn't allow you to record from inside of your own computer because of all sorts of nefarious copyright reasons. They don't want you recording everything that's ever been played through your entire computer, but for our purposes, it's your music. You want to record it, so you need to have a way of actually doing that. That's where Loopback comes in. And when you download Loopback and you run it, it looks like this. Here. And it says, hey, click here to create a new virtual device. And when you create a new virtual device, it's actually creating like an audio interface inside of your computer. Just like you take a cable and you go cable out of a guitar into an amp, or just a cable out of one thing into another. This takes a cable, a virtual cable, and goes out of your game into QuickTime. If I look at my audio MIDI setup now, it actually adds an extra interface to run everything through. And when you do that and you go back to QuickTime, oh my goodness. Hello, computer. There it goes. When you come back here and look in here, you should now have a loopback audio interface. Once you do all of that, the other thing you need to do is come in here and you need to tell it to actually go what application you want to record. And you want it to point to 2D Platformer or Angry Bots, whichever one you're recording. Right here. And when you do that, it shows up here. You will be able to, I don't want to do this right now, but you want to be able to listen through your speakers. You uncheck the mute audio sources so that you can hear everything. And then you go run the game, and you should be able to meter it. Once you play the game, you should see some meters here inside of the screen recording, and you know at that point that it's working. When you get this set up, you might hear it doubled up, like it might monitor back twice. Depends on how you have your audio set up, but it either can be this, it could be monitoring through QuickTime, which could be this fader. It could be this setting, monitor through audio through whatever your output is. So double check those just to make sure. The other thing is, if you hear it doubled, it doesn't actually capture doubled. So you can just hit record anyway. You'll monitor it doubled, and then you'll listen. The video will be fine. So just a couple of pointers there. So you'll install Loopback. You'll set up for the screen recording. Like I said, you'll create a new virtual device. You'll select the game application that you want to run. You check the checkboxes. You open up QuickTime. You set up a new screen recording. I showed you this where you click the little arrow and you want to set up to Loopback so that you can record inside of QuickTime. At that point, you should see meters. And you can hit record. Depends on if you have like 2 screens set up. If you're just recording on your one screen, you can either click and drag just a portion of your screen if it's in a window, or you can just click and it will record the entire screen. Depends on how you have it set up. The only thing to watch out for is most of everybody's computers now have Retina displays, and that's like a really super high resolution. And if you do the entire full screen, it might just slow everything down trying to capture all that stuff. It just might be something to watch out for. I got a couple more slides on that. So the best thing to do is run it in a window and just kind of highlight over the window so that it only captures. You don't capture all of your messy desktop and all this extra stuff. You just capture exactly what you want. So it starts the screen capture. You can run like I said, you can run it in a window. If you click this little checkbox, it says it's in a window. If you unclick this checkbox, it says it's not in a window. More than likely, you've played the game up to this point. You probably know how best it is to run. You've probably already set all this stuff, if you even had to mess with it at all. So more than likely, it's just fine. But if things start acting screwy while trying to do the recording, some of these settings can help. So you hit record when you're ready to go, and you start recording and demonstrating the game. The actual content of the video, I leave that very much up to you. It's your demo video. It's what you want to show off and how you want to show it off. What I'm most concerned with, most focused on, is the process. The fact that you have the game, you have the music and sound effects working in the game. That's a huge portion of the project that you're now demonstrating. And you also have QuickTime and you've got Loopback or something installed. I guess I should also point out, if you already have and you use something like Soundflower or Audio Hijack, those things are identical to Loopback, or at least in our function, for what we need. And so you can use those pieces of software. As long as it doesn't watermark it or do anything weird with the video or audio, if you already have it set up in a certain way, you can use that. But once you've captured this video, you show that you have all of the sound effects and music working in the game, and you can do a video capture. You have the game playing back. You're using QuickTime and something like Loopback to capture the audio. And so if later on you have a different project or different sounds, you want to redo this one, you can always just create new video captures to show the work that you've done. Demonstrate all the music and sound design. The other thing to point out is I do not count every single sound effect, meaning that I don't like track that you have triggered every single sound effect in every piece of music, because I know that a lot of it or some of it is left up to chance. You can't always trigger every single music file because it's random. So you're going to get like 3 intros, 3 main loops, and only 2 of the endings will play within about 2 minutes long. We suggest that the videos be around 1 minute to 2 minutes long, which is right here. Oops. Right. Oh, there it is. Video capture should be no longer than 2 minutes. So again, the content is up to you. How you demonstrate it is up to you. I would suggest a big one is don't play the game like you're trying to win the game. Don't just do the video capture just to show off how good you are at playing the game. It's about showing off all of the sounds. One common thing that I'll see especially with 2D platformer, is I'll hear the intro and then they'll start playing the game, and for like a minute or two I'll just see them play the game and they'll never die, or they'll just die once at the end and stop the video, and that means I only saw 1 intro and 1 ending. You created 4 other files and never showed anybody. So die a couple of times, jump off the edge, trigger some of those ending cues, try to trigger as many of the sound effects as possible, and just kind of, show it off in its best light overall. Then you stop the screen recording. You save the screen recording, name it your last name, your first name, GCP Week4 2D platformer, whatever or Angry Bots. Do not name it last name, first name. Your name isn't last name, first name. You have a last name. You have a first name. Please, it happens every month. Somebody at some point names something last name, first name. So just watch out for that. And then please, please, please check your screen recording. Watch the video after it's done. This happens. I mean, most people do this, no problem. But for some reason, I will always, every month, I'll get a series of videos that either the audio is just missing, or they used the internal microphone on their computer. It played out of their computer speakers and then back into the internal microphone. And if it didn't feed back, then it sounds horrible. It just sounds really thin, and you hear them in the background, like breathing and clicking on their keyboard, and it's really kind of weird. And you hear their dog barking in the background and their family running around or whatever it is. So just watch out for that. Double check the video. Make sure it has the correct content of it. It has the correct thing that you captured. The other thing is don't hit record and record it for 2 minutes the first time, because there's no telling if you got it right the first time. So just hit record for a few seconds, and then stop it and check the recording and make sure you're actually capturing the thing you think you're recording. So you don't have to do it over and over again and waste any time. A couple optional tips. Clear off the desktop. If you are capturing any aspect of the desktop, it's probably best to just make it as clear as possible. I know a lot of folks, we have audio directors and people in different game teams come and talk to our Full Sail student, or come talk to our students, And they'll say often if we see screenshots or things and it just looks like you have a messy desktop and you posted up a video and it just looks like things are all over the place, it's not probably going to help your cause overall because a lot of people don't want to work with that. You can either do a full screen or a high resolution recording. You can do a low resolution recording. If more than likely the video capture is just going to work just fine. Every once in a while, depending on people's computers and whatever they're running or how they have it set up, this might start making your computer chug a little bit because you got to play the game and do a video capture at the same time. If that is the case, then as long as the audio doesn't stutter or doesn't drop out, if the video kind of gets slow or choppy, that's fine. For the purposes of the video, for the grade and for the assignment, that's fine. Obviously, you want to make as a high quality video as possible. I wouldn't really even consider just focusing on the fact that it's an assignment. Create a proper and a demo video that you can use beyond the class. So if need be, try shrinking down the resolution of the game. Maybe even try shrinking down the resolution of your monitor and your screen. That might help create smoother videos overall. Once you have done the video for both Angry Bots and 2D Platformer, you're going to post them up on YouTube. Just put them up there. You can put it just so that I can view it. You don't have to make it completely public, but don't make it private. Make sure that you post it up and you can share the link and have everybody reference it. So the assignment of video capture is really getting everything set up. Once it's working, then it's just playing the game and just showing off how your music and sound effects sound in the game. All right, so that is your final video capture. And to then show it off, or then to kind of deliver the final version of everything back here on FSO. The kind of big assignment for this week is your final project delivery. And this is going to be basically, it's a 10-question test, but it's not like a test that you study for because you have all the answers. It's just really a summary of your composition. So it's broken down into two halves. 5 of the questions are for 2D Platformer, 5 of the questions for Angry Bots. They're very similar to each other. The first one is 2D Platformer video capture. Provide the YouTube link to your 2D Platformer game capture video. So you just did the video capture, you uploaded it to YouTube, now post the YouTube link here. Make sure that it works. You can always go into incognito mode to check links. That's how I do a lot of my stuff with YouTube and Google, since I have like a personal login for YouTube and Google, but whenever I want to do any Full Sail stuff, you just go into incognito mode and it forgets who you are, and then you can log in as whatever you want. So if you just double check all the links that you're going to send me, make sure that they work. You can use incognito mode to do that, or send them to somebody else, and then that's how I will be able to check it also. So give me a YouTube link. This is actually quite important. A missing YouTube link or a missing audio track in a video renders the submission ungradable. If I can't hear it, if I can't hear your music and your sound effects, or the video doesn't work, or the link doesn't work, I can't grade the rest of the assignment. So make sure the video is there and working. Then you'll send me a screenshot of your DAW session. You will, this is the 2D Platformer instrumentation. List the instruments that you used in the intros, main loop, and ending cues. Name any synths or sample library sources for all the tracks. So you will tell me what instruments you used. Tell me in the intros, the main loops, and the endings, which synths, which drums. Don't just tell me I used a piano and I used a banjo and an organ and a synthesizer. Tell me which presets, which sample libraries, which synthesizers you used, which presets you used, so that the idea is if somebody else had to recreate this session, they knew what instruments. They could go load up those, assuming that they had the same instrumentation that you did. Somebody could kind of recreate all of this stuff if necessary. Next, 2D platformer transitions. You will take screenshots of your intros, your main loops, and your endings, and then line them up in a particular way. You are going to take your intro 1 and connect it to main loop 2, and then connect it to ending 3. And then take intro 2 and connect it to main loop 3, and then go to ending 1. And then take intro 3 and go to main loop 1, and go to ending 2. I guess I could just read it up here. Basically, it's taking all of your tracks and rearranging them into different orders, taking a screenshot of it, and then answering a few questions, like describe what you listen to each track. How does the music transition from one cue to the next? Describe what you hear. Does the intensity of the music build with the intro cue? Are the same instruments heard from the intros through the main loops and the endings? Are there any hiccups or pops as the music shifts from one music cue to the next? So these are just basic overview. How well did it work? Did it sound as you expected? Just kind of give me insight into the final product. Then you will create a screenshot of your final mix. Give me a peak level and an RMS level. Use the level meter plugin found in Logic, just so I can get an overview of your levels. AngryBots section is very much very similar. AngryBots video capture. Provide the YouTube link for that. Give me a screenshot of your AngryBots session. And list the instrumentation used in your ambient, buzzer action, mech action, and spider action cues. Then you'll take your 4 files, line them all up together, ambient, buzzer action, mech action, spider action, and then basically comment the same way. How did it work? Listen to your cues playing back together. Describe what you hear. How well did the cues play back? Are there any noticeable issues? Do the cues start and end at the same time? Are there any rhythms that clash? Do the melodies or harmonies clash? Just to get an overview of how well the main portion of the composition worked. Give me a summary with a screenshot of your AngryBots mix. So really, it's just kind of like a post-mortem overview, summary, summation of how well everything worked in the final projects. So that is the direction we are headed in this last week. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to stick around here for a few minutes if you have any questions. But again, this is the last week. Let me know if you are having any challenges or anything that you need to discuss in the final part of the week. But we have one more class on Thursday. We can listen to or discuss any or anything that you need, or take a look at your final video. But other than that, let's end it there. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again on Thursday.